This essay example, as well as thousands of others, is available in text format on our website for free and without registration. Simply Google Ivy Panda Free Essays.
Steve Jobs' speech. Stay hungry. Stay foolish. Was presented to the graduates of Stanford University on June 12, 2005. This speech is very interesting for analysis, taking into account the fact that it differs from the usual Steve Jobs style of presentation at the meetings of his company. This appeal for the students is presented in a quite friendly and warm atmosphere. Let us have a closer look at the parts of the speech, namely the introduction, the main body consisting of 3 stories from Steve Jobs' life, and the conclusion, which is rather an appeal to the students. It should be noted that there is quite a strong opening to the speech. The speech begins with a greeting and compliment for the audience. I am honored to be with you today for your commencement from one of the finest universities in the world. Such a beginning already settles the audience to the positive concord, and the listeners are ready to accept the speech. More than that, Steve Jobs demonstrates modesty with these words as far as he has not graduated college. The speech is presented in a conversational style, as if he is a friend to the audience. Such a style of presentation is very accepted by the students. Steve Jobs does not forgive the age of his audience, namely the graduates of the university, and he uses a colloquial style of speech, which they usually use in their everyday lives, and adds some humor to discharge the intense atmosphere. More than that, Jobs uses quite simple structures and sentences, which make his speech easy to understand. Although he speaks to well-educated students, he does not use sophisticated and complicated structures that make the students think over the meaning. Steve Jobs' main aim is to pass the main idea to the students, thus, he chooses the simplest words to do this. Steve Jobs uses pauses to separate the key points and to attract the students' attention to the main ideas. More than that, Steve Jobs' speech is full of interesting stylistic devices. He resorts to the use of parallelism in many sentences, for example, that my mother had never graduated from college and that my father had never graduated from high school. Repetitions are also successfully used in his speech to attract more attention to the key points of his stories. Steve Jobs uses the rule of 3 in his speech. Namely, he presents 3 interesting stories from his life that are didactic for the graduating students. More than that, he uses the rules of 3 in many sentences and paragraphs. All external expectations, all pride, all fear. Don't waste it living someone else's life. Don't be trapped by dogma, which is living with the results of other people's thinking. Don't let the noise of others' opinions drown out your own inner voice. The rule of 3 is also observed in the choice of his stories. His 3 stories are constructed according to the themes of birth, death, and rebirth. He pays graduating students attention to the way these stories may be used in their lives. It should be pointed out that Steve Jobs' speech has some drawbacks. Firstly, the weak point is that he reads almost the full speech from the sheet of paper and does not make eye contact with the audience. Secondly, he sometimes uses inappropriate words. For example, he says, "and since Windows just copied the Mac." These words may be offensive to those students who cannot afford a Mac and use Microsoft. Such words may be avoided without any damage to the main point of the speech. On the whole, Steve Jobs' speech is well structured and logically connected, and it has positive feedback from the audience. We may conclude that the speech has achieved its main aims. This essay on Steve Jobs' speech Stay Hungry, Stay Foolish analysis was written and submitted by a student just like you. The Ivy Panda Samples database hosts thousands of works similar to this one, on various subjects. Visit ivypanda.com to find what you are looking for, free of charge.